I'm going to try holding this and see how the audio quality is. But hello, good day, good morning, welcome or welcome back to the channel. Thanks for checking this out. I wasn't even going to record today, but something's on my mind, and it's been like that for quite some time. And I suppose as we go forward here, it's August 4th, 2024, and I'm thinking about something in particular. I was thinking to title this video would be something like The Language of Power versus Imitators and Frauds. And what's been on my mind is mainly how the English language has intentionally been watered down and degraded. And part of that's a consequence of time and advertising and the propagation and proliferation of doublespeak and all manners of just mumbo jumbo and manners of speaking and thinking, which ultimately don't mean anything. And I was going to then illustrate what is the power and purpose of language in contrast to just solely commercial purposes, and the way these commercial purposes degrade not just the art of communication and the art of language usage, but specifically in my case is in America, um, how the English language has been watered down, not just in what passes as literature, but what passes as journalism, and what passes as just the use of the English language. So I have an excerpt here from Ralph Waldo Emerson, American philosopher, writer, all-around dude, man of class and style. And this is an excerpt from his essay Language, or Nature on Language. And he gets into the purposes of language, the nature of language, how it's used, but he's talking about an individual's ability to use language, right? Because while we might uh, be able to see the imagery that we intone in our language pass to one another, ultimately what an individual is seeing and his individual or her individual ability to then connect what she's thinking and seeing and feeling to words that other people can understand, right? These are big differences, and there's many ways and purposes in which you can do this. And in the case of, well, I was thinking about fraud being made manifest, but I'll let Emerson take the wheel here. Emerson writes, a man's power to connect his thought with its proper symbol and so to utter it depends on the simplicity of his character, that is, upon his love of truth and his desire to communicate it without loss. The corruption of man is followed by the corruption of language. When simplicity of character and the sovereignty of ideas is broken up by the prevalence of secondary desires, right? The desire of riches, of pleasure, of power, and of praise, and duplicity and falsehood take the place of simplicity and truth, right? What are you seeing? Be honest with me. The power over nature as an interpreter of the will is in a degree lost. New imagery ceases to be created, and old words are perverted to stand for things which are not. Right, here you go. A paper currency is employed when there is no gold bullion in the vaults. In due time, the fraud is manifest, and words lose all power to stimulate the understanding or the affections, right? If someone lies to you day after day, let's say the authorities and the experts, they lie to you and they try to convince you otherwise, and they gaslight you and tell you that what you're seeing is not real and what you're seeing is not what you're seeing, or what you're feeling is not what you're feeling, because this is what he's saying. Language has the power to affect our feelings. That's what effective communication does and is. Whether that's a man seducing a woman or a man, or an artist singing a song, any number of things, or even, animals to one another, or animals just singing, or, making noises. It's a natural function of the will, and it serves as an interpreter of the will in nature, where these wills communicate with one another. So fraud is manifest, and words lose all power to stimulate the understanding or the affections. And it's not just by people lying and deceiving, right? That why would I believe you a second or a third or a fourth time? Oh, even if we put 2008 down the memory hole, even if we put the past down the memory hole, the fraud won't be made manifest, right? So you can change reality if you learn how to lie about it and lie about it well, or if you realize that most people are powerless against the lies, and they can call it stupid, and they can say it's pointless, and they can say you're crazy and what are you talking about. But that's the point of the lie, is to be duplicitous, is to hide reality rather than represent it. um, in due time the fraud is manifest, and words lose all power to stimulate the understanding or the affections, right? And then you can't communicate your meaning either. So hundreds of writers may be found in an ever-long civilized nation who for a short time believe and make others believe that they see and utter truths. Oh, so many of you are so cute and funny too. Who do not of themselves clothe one thought in its natural garment, right? It's all manufactured, it's all fabricated, it's all to make money, it's all to impress, it's all to dazzle, it's all a show. I did a React video on, let's say, it was Marlon Brando on acting, and when Brando says acting is a profession that's not fit for a man, you might as well say politics isn't fit for a man. Or you also might as well say living in America isn't fit for a man, because you have to be an actor to get along with the childlike people who live here, because they can't handle a single ounce of truth. They'll call it dark. They'll say, oh, no, you need help, or oh, you should do something, right? Like there's a certain element of pity that if you take the anti-intellectual route, if you take the stupid route, if you drink the poison and call it truth, if you play with the language that alters reality, right, that you can have your out. But the repression is made manifest somewhere. That pressure blows out somewhere. That reality reveals itself somewhere. It can't be hidden, and it cannot be not seen either. And there's a question of, well, can it live in any kind of collective memory? And with our culture and how quick technology moves, the biggest blessing in the world since the instantiation of mics and recorders and, i.e., truth revealing devices everywhere, right? The biggest boon in this world is that there's so much noise and garbage that the truth can still easily be hidden. The truth can still, just the data is simple to fudge. Like back in 2008, when the experts and authorities were all lying about like what they knew was going on and what they thought was going to happen, and oh, you can trust them and go back to sleep, and don't worry, little sheep, don't worry, little piglets, your money's safe with us, and you come to find out it's not, right? And the banks basically don't mean anything anymore. They're basically symbolic institutions. Yes, symbols are still power, but they don't have any money anymore, nor do they have the ability to back the money, right? Not only do they not have gold, they can't even back the paper dollar. That's why everyone's been rushing for assets in the last few years over cash money, because this quote unquote interest is actually supposedly taxation passing itself as inflation, but what really is, it's just increased taxation to cover the Fed's $1 trillion runaway budget that is our country's future, which seems like depression. It seems like we're kind of already been there, but so the fraud is manifest. And then in terms of language usage, right, what I was getting at about power and communication and what it means and why it matters, that hundreds of writers may be found, right? You guys believe you utter truths, but you're all crazy. They don't close one thought in its natural garment, right? It's all manipulation. It's all tricksy. It's also clever, right? A lot of it's a reduction to wit. That's the funniest. It's just people fight so hard to say the simplest, dumbest things and think that's clever. Make others believe that they see and utter truths who do not themselves, right, but who feed unconsciously on the language created by the primary writers of the country, those whose namely hold primarily on nature. Right, he's saying that you guys are parasites, that you took what the originators did and the creators did, and the people who really either created the language or expanded the language or did whatever it was to explain or theorize on its values, and you just muck about in it. And this is what this is what every new writer does. This is what every mediocre writer does. You begin with imitation, and eventually you see if you have any voice of your own of which to speak, right? So the other idea of a title of this video I wanted to possibly title was Learning to Speak, Language of Power or Imitation and Fraud, right? Is this real or is this fake? is this person real or is this person fake? So we're talking about people lying. But wise men pierce this rotten diction, right? This is the power of it. But wise men pierce this rotten diction and fasten words again to visible things, so that picturesque language is at once a commanding certificate that he who employs it is a man in alliance with truth and God. And I think modern people, and modern Americans especially, are too cynical to even hear a word like truth or God without immediately scoffing or being, oh, but what are the alternatives? Call it what you will. Say it is what it is. It's symbolic. So if he's using the word God, he's saying ultimate power. What's the closest approximate we have? Because he's saying it's not the state, it's not these fake writers, it's not these journalists, it's not these imitators, right? It's man. The moment our discourse rises above the ground line of familiar facts and are inflamed with passion or exalted by thought, right, abstract nonsense, it clothes itself in images. A man conversing in earnest, if he watches intellectual processes, will find that a material image more or less luminous arises in his mind, contemporaneous with every thought, which furnishes the vestment of the thought. Hence, good writing and brilliant discourse are perpetual allegories, right? It's been said that horror and other stories are allegories. It's pretty much all allegory because it's all metaphor and symbol. And then when we meet one another, it begins with projection, because what else are you going off of? And then you begin to say, am I seeing what I really seeing? Is this person who I think they are? Are they who they're honestly representing? Are they hiding something? Are they veiling something, right? Why would they veil something? Why would you use language to hide, right? It's a weird notion. So, the moment our discourse rises above the ground line of familiar facts. Okay, so I also wanted to revisit the concept I stated in the last video or two, was about psychologists and linguist G.I. Gurdjieff, who said of Americans, he thought Americans would go insane or generally kind of lose their minds or lose their touch with reality based on two main things: tall buildings and electricity. And if you can follow the line of thought through, as I said last time, it's that the tall building is the example of being ungrounded, and that these are usually financial centers and nothing else, right? It shows you what we value, because these are like our modern day churches are financial centers, not actual churches, right? The financial centers and the business hubs and the logistics hubs, all this stuff matters more than modern religion, because this is what makes the world go round, and what's left of the old world still kind of papers over that. But I don't want to get too far off track here saying that um, he's talking about, when I was the being off the ground floor. He's saying the moment we get away from the earnest facts and the earnest reality and start thinking big and dreaming big, as grand as that may be, that we are removing ourselves from the ground floor, right? Back to the tall buildings, being ungrounded from reality. Yes, it dominates the horizon. Yes, it will make you feel small. And that's kind of the point. And the other thing is electricity, that not just the buzz and hum of it and the noise, and that mankind has had to reduce himself to a second-rate machine to tend to the machines, right? To live a life in servitude to the machines, right? That all these things factor into Americans increasingly losing their minds. So this is what Emerson is talking about, that by lying to yourselves, by altering and tampering with reality through language, just like I've been talking about in 1984 in Big Brother, you can indeed change people's perceptions of reality. And with that comes the consequences. In the case of a financial system, well, again, there's no bullion in the vaults, there's no money in the banks, there's no one there to guarantee it. What's going to happen? Oh, there's lots of people saying the math doesn't add up, and it hasn't since 2008. Well, keep going. So wise men pierce this rotten diction, right? Those who employ it prove that they're in alliance with truth and God, right? Because you can feel the affect. There's a draw to it. Yes, you can feel it also when a clever con man, right? Because this is what language in America has been reduced to. You don't necessarily need intelligence. You just need to memorize a script, right? Acting. When I said, Brando said that acting isn't fit for men, and I said neither is American life, neither is modern American life, it's because everyone wants men to be actors. They want us to be everything but what we really are, whether that's very intelligent or very dumb. Either way, like, just men can't have a bone. They are very well hated and discredited because, of course, we have to trust the authorities and the institution, and an increasingly effeminate and insane society, right? Just completely out of touch with reality. And I think it's reflected in the statistics of our society, not just the poverty and the homelessness and the fact that lots of people increasingly can't even survive here, just make a bare bones living, but that increasingly they're medicated and they're insane and they're on drugs, and any number of coping mechanisms that produce violent and tragic results in a culture that refuses to see and acknowledge and admit the cost of its tragic and violent results, right? So, the moment our discourse rises above ground levels, yes, uh, and is inflamed with passion or exalted by thought, it clothes itself in images. A man conversing in earnest, if he watches his intellectual processes, will find that a material image more or less luminous arises to his mind, contemporaneous with every thought, which furnishes the vestment of the thought. Hence, good writing and brilliant discourse are perpetual allegories. I'm repeating this for a reason. I hope you're appreciating that too. I'm not trying to mess with anyone. Hence, good writing and brilliant discourse are perpetual allegories. The imagery is spontaneous. It's in the moment. It's not a script. It's not an NPC yakking away. It's not a politician just talking blandly to a crowd. It's not a corporation or human resources using disgusting human resources, antiseptic language devoid of humanity and thought and feeling, which is part of why everyone despises and the proletariat, the 85% of the lower America who aren't sophisticated enough to play the language games, why they resent it, right? Well, because they also know that it's class warfare, but they're just not allowed to express that because that's the whole thing. Like, no, away from the table with you. Like, follow your carrot on a stick. Go work your job. Shut up, right? Like, the individual doesn't matter. That's the language. That's the right. Only the party matters. Only the war machine matters. Only to the degrees that you're valuable to it and can prove to everyone by dollar amount or greatest amount, right? Like, these are the things I've been talking about. It doesn't matter if there's no gold in the vaults. It doesn't matter if, like, so many men and women are cheap imposters of imposters, that our leadership are just fake and ineffectual, right? That's part of the name of the game too. When you're waging a perpetual war, it doesn't matter that you're inefficient. You can even fail upwards, right? That's what America illustrates quite well. So Hence, good writing and brilliant discourse perpetual allegories. The imagery is spontaneous. It is a blending of experience with the present action of the mind. It is proper creation. It is the working of the original cause through the instruments he has already made. Right? A friend of mine, for instance, he said that a good teacher of his once described, he's a jazz musician, and he said his favorite jazz teacher described jazz as an impromptu, improvisational musical conversation. And then real conversation with human beings speaking their hearts and minds is the same thing, but our instruments are just our voices, and everything is sensed through the body. So if I sense you're full of shit, I'm probably going to say something. It might be sly, it might be clever, it might be overt. It just depends, because violence can be deferred. That's the point of being civilized, is we defer the violence. We learn to play other games. We get our jollies. If cruelty is off the table, if violence is off the table, if hatred is off the table, if you remove all the easy options that civilization and the state provides you, what are you left with? Well, you have to devise your own games, and you have to learn how to create your own values, right? So these are the kinds of things we're talking about here. This is the kind of thing that Emerson's talking about. A man or a woman who knows how to use and wield language and communication is does have gold in the vaults. And then you can see the difference. Again, all the little con men of the world, all the little imposters, right? They're really good at spinning a story. They're really good at drawing people in. They're really good at maintaining a certain distance and indifference, usually along corporate and state sanctioned lines, because the whole thing is just designed to make money or fool you or get you to purchase and think and believe and live along the prefabricated ways that our society markets to us through never-ending propaganda and a factorial farmed school education system where if you don't fit in that factory farm, they're going to medicate you, which to me seems like chemical castration, right? If you're altering human brain chemistry from an early age with things like prescription methamphetamine and prescription chemicals of all varieties, it just seems quite psychotic to me. So if when Emerson says the fraud is manifest, I can see it clearly. But I also have the language to devise and study and see and then check and recheck, right? And I know with other people, if they've been listening to liars, if they've been, conditioned by con men, if they've been taught by marketers to believe and think and defer to authorities in certain manners, because it was the same thing in COVID, it was the same thing with 2008, and it's gonna be the same thing with the next, as this perpetual war continues, it's gonna be the same thing over and over again. But for those who can see it, the fraud will be manifest. So anyway, again, impromptu video today. Been thinking about this for a while. Emerson, this has been an excerpt from Emerson's essay series on nature. This was language. I seriously suggest anyone who finds their way here to go read those essays. They're very easy to understand compared to both archaic language and modern language. So it stands as a testament of time and what a master wordsmith and prose writer, aka poet, he was, right? A very rare mind, a very rare thinker, a man expressing very delicate and important feelings in a society that that was back then and is now more so ever psychotically numb and confused about its own feelings, from the individual to the group, right? Anyway, thanks for your time. Thanks for checking me out, the channel. I'm Zach Markowski. This is Sharper Pen Image Consulting. Focuses image consulting, literature and art, specifically appearance, behavior, and communication as it pertains to humanity, the individual, the group, the collective, and our daily lives. If you need image consulting, drop me a line. If you need help, drop me a line. If you have questions and concerns on any of the material, drop me a line. Pretty soon I'll be collecting whatever replies come along and making response videos to those. So keep it up. Thanks for the support, and I'll see you next time. Bye.